or welcome to the channel. If you didn't know already, or if you see our short that we're gonna post too, you'll know that Adoptions Awareness Month, November's Adoption Awareness Month, and because of that, adoption is obviously something we went through before we got pregnant with our daughter Anna, and so it's something that we want to be able to still bring awareness to with the channel. And so because of that, and since November's Adoption Awareness Month, we're going to be doing adoption videos all through November to kind of talk to you guys about the process that we did go through, how we felt, and just bring more information about that topic.
And we're going to try to address as many questions as possible. And a lot of the commonly thought of questions, and some of the questions that we even came up with that stumped some of the representatives. So we're going to see it be as informative as possible with that. Okay?
Okay, yeah, and if you guys see me looking over here, it's just because we're watching Anna. She's sleeping, taking a nap, so we have her on the camera on the other camera. But today we're gonna mainly be focusing on walking you guys through a little map, like a what's it called? A guide map of what it's like once you decide to go through the adoption process, and kind of all the things you need to go through to get through that stage. I'm gonna do a quick disclaimer though. We obviously are not gonna talk about the post-placement adoption of when you actually get placed with a child, and we're not going to talk about feelings with that. We know a little bit about it just because they were preparing us, but obviously if you've been following us, or if you check out any of our other videos, you will know that we were going through an adoption process between June of 2020 all the way until August of 2021, and then we found out that we were actually miraculously pregnant after years of infertility with our daughter that we had 6 months ago. And because of the surprise pregnancy and everything going on, we actually had put our adoption on hold. So we never got placed with a child, and so we've never been through the post-placement of that, so we don't feel like we can speak on it. However, we are trying to reach out to some of our friends that we made in the adoption community and see if anybody who did go through the process would be willing to come on the channel and kind of do a video for you guys where we're going to give them like a Q&A and kind of ask them and have them kind of talk about the post-placement, because I think that's a decent part of the process as well that people want to know about as well. So hopefully, probably, I was trying to get that video for November for the awareness month as well, but I'm not sure if that will happen. But definitely in the future, I hope that one of the couples at least that we can reach out to will be open to coming to the channel and talking about that. And so that will be in a future video. But this one specifically is about what we went through, the process, and kind of like if you're thinking about adoption, what you would have to go through and what we learned along the way and how we felt along the way. So just a little backstory. After 3 years of infertility, I think I thought about it first, and I started thinking that maybe we should look into adoption around the spring of 2020 during the pandemic. And I brought it up to Sam, and the first thing we did, so the first thing you would do, wait, hold on one second. I'm gonna say another disclaimer real quick. We specifically did a domestic infant adoption, which is when you are trying to adopt through an agency and you're trying to adopt an infant domestically within the US, and that's all we have any experience in. So that's specifically what we're talking about when we say this video, and specifically in the New York and tri-state area, because adoption, different laws are in different states. And even if you're doing it through the US, if you're in California, if you're in like different states, Florida, all the states in the US have slightly different adoption laws, so please check out your specific laws. But what we will be talking about is domestic infant adoption, and our experience specifically is in New York and the tri-state area. So specifically, the first thing we did was I talked to Sam, we talked to each other, we thought about it, and then we decided that we were going to move forward. So the first thing we did was research adoption agencies, and we did that. Basically, I started by watching other people on YouTube actually that went through adoption processes, but obviously they didn't name their adoption agencies normally, but I just kind of watched videos kind of like this one, where do we start? And most people said find an agency that you want to go with, and so that is kind of step one. And we started researching adoption agencies in the area, and like cost and just the process, and honestly there's not a lot of information.
No, it is like, it is actually the scarcest Google search you will ever find. Even the millions of results that Google will give you is actually the scarcest that it will be.
Yeah, so so after watching videos, after doing research, I thought, and we both agreed, that domestic infant adoption was what we wanted to do, because we wanted an infant, we wanted a baby. We didn't want to do, we did a little bit of research for international adoption, and that wasn't right for us. We didn't want an older child because we were longing to parent a child, an infant, and we wanted that experience of parenting an infant, at least at that time. And so, and then other things like fostering to adopt, that wasn't right for us. I'm not against that. You know, maybe in the future I would be open to that, but right then and there where we were, we had just went through 3 years of infertility, and we really wanted an infant that we could raise and would be our child. And when you're doing fostering to adopt, you can ultimately end up fostering a child that you adopt, but the process is a little bit different, and you could also end up having to put that child back in the system, or place that child with another family, because you are in the beginning a foster parent, and it was just different. So after researching it a little bit, and like I said, watching videos, doing extensive research for like a couple weeks, we decided that domestic infant adoption was right for us. And so now we needed an agency that specialized in that. And honestly, yeah, like I said, not a lot of information. I believe there was only at the time 3 or 4 big, well-known agencies in the city that even remotely fit our needs. And to be honest, one of those have closed since then. I'm not specifically sure which one, but I'll get into further how we know that. I don't know which one, but I know that one big agency did close due to the pandemic. And that was because adoption was slightly affected by the pandemic. But we'll get into that, because there's a whole story behind how we know that and how we felt about it. But at the time, there were about 3 or 4 replicable agencies that were big enough, that were in our area, that were licensed, and all those things. And so honestly, 2 of those agencies really didn't fit our needs. Just kind of the way they did things, kind of price and different things like that. And then there was 2 left, right? And we were kind of narrowing it down and doing research on both. And Sam happened to mention that he had a coworker that had adopted, so we could talk about that.
So like about, I want to say, so we started, what do we say, June 2020,
June 2020 was when we actually started, but I think this was around like May.
Yeah.
Like the research and all that.
Yeah, so the coworker I knew was about, I think, he had just adopted, I think, the year before.
Or yeah,
so a year or 2 years before. Literally not that far off. And what had happened was I remember running into him, and I said, "Oh, I need to talk to you about something." And I guess he already knew what I was going to ask him, because then I got a Facebook message literally that same day, at the end of the day, "Oh, hey, this is the one I used." I was like, "Oh, how'd you know I was going to ask that?" I was like, "Because everybody's going to ask me that," because he was the one that went on leave that time. So I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Right, and so he had adopted the year before. Him and his husband have twins. It's a boy and a girl, twins. And so we felt a little more comfortable talking to them, and so we started by actually talking to them, and it was COVID, obviously. We did a Zoom, and we were still in quarantine, so yeah, we were talking to them through Zoom, and we just kind of talked to them about their experience and how it really worked, and we got to ask them questions that maybe you wouldn't feel comfortable asking a stranger, and we got the answers that probably a stranger won't share with you. So if you know anybody, that would be my first tip. Find out if you know anybody, and sometimes you don't even know that you know, because not everyone discloses that they adopted and things like that. So, or not everyone, you may know, like people may say, "Oh, this is my child, I adopted them," but once you adopt a child, they become your child, and you don't refer to them as like your adopted child all the time. So you may not even know that like a coworker, or obviously if it's someone close you will know, but like you might know a coworker, you might not know. So you might want to see if you do actually know someone who has personal experience, because you can get those answers that you can't probably get when you're working on the other end with like the agency and things like that. So, or just in a different way, or you just might feel a little bit more comfortable. So even after speaking to them, I think we were pretty good, but we still were like, just new to the process. We didn't really know where to go. And then what we did was so they told us the first thing you do with that agency at least, is fill out the form, and then someone will get in contact with you. And so we went online and we filled out their preliminary form for any intended parents, that are open to adoption, that are looking for adoption. And it kind of just asks you general, like, name, age, race, which adoption are you interested in. So they do have an international program, they do have a older child program, and then they have the domestic infant program, and they run simultaneously. So we filled it out specifically for the infant adoption, and just general, I think, where you live, different things like that. And we filled that out, and within 24 hours,
give or take,
they were pretty quick.
Yeah,
they're pretty efficient. And so within 24 hours, someone did reach out and ask us, are you guys interested in adoption? And we said yes. And they answered some of our general questions about the agency, and then combined that with the fact that we had talked to your friends and coworker, and combined that with getting our questions answered. We were pretty comfortable, but we wanted to nobody was giving us like the process, and because we're planners, and because this was such a big life thing, and because we have been through so much, we really needed that. And so this is not really part of the process, but we asked for it and we did get it, so it is something you can ask for, because it really helped. So we asked to speak to, I think he was we asked to speak to someone at the agency. We asked if we could do a Zoom with someone at the agency who could kind of walk us through the process before we actually signed on to be with the agency, and if that would be okay. And they told us yes, and they set us up with a meeting for one of the head people. I think he's like a coordinator, adoption coordinator, and they set us up and we did a Zoom, and we just asked him like what the process looked like. We asked him some of the finances, things like that. He is also an adopted parent, so we asked him about his own experience, because he was a client of the agency before he worked for them, and so that was helpful. We asked him all those questions, and it was about an hour meeting, and it was pretty good. We felt good vibes from them.
Very funny guy.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. We had a great conversation, and that made us feel really comfortable, so that's why I say it was helpful.
Oh, I want to add something to that. Like, don't ever feel ashamed when you're like reaching out to just get some of these questions answered. There are people too. They know a lot of them are adoptive parents as well, so they don't have any problems. They're very relatable. They can talk to you, so they don't have an issue with that.
I don't specifically know how that runs in other agencies, but specifically in our agency, most people that work there were clients before they worked there, or have some experience in adoption besides just working there.
And not surface level experience. Like, they just went to this one little thing. No,
most of the people that we came in contact with that are people that we worked with, whether it be the social workers, the coordinators, our advocate, they are either all adopted parents, which means they have children that were adopted, or they were adopted themselves, they're adoptees. Most of them, I would say like 95% of the agency that we came in contact with anyway. I don't know if that's the same for other agencies, but I know that in our agency there was like that personal touch, and that made it a little bit more comfortable. And so you might want to look into that as well when choosing an agency.
Yes, definitely. You want to do your research. That for like anything else that you find on Google, you will find potential scams, and you have to do your due diligence. And it's only up until a certain point that you're gonna have to trust what you're seeing. That's why you do as much research as you can. Once you think you've done enough, do a little bit more, right? Ask someone else. Go to the library. Call your state's local government line to confirm, is this a legitimate agency? Do you have their license number? You need to find this stuff, because adoption can get really expensive, and you don't want to play with that. Like, you need to be, you're starting your family.
And like, there are many reasons why people adopt, but people also know that one of the reasons people adopt is infertility, or not being able to hold a pregnancy for multiple reasons, or those things. So a lot of people know that some couples are coming into adoption after a lot of grief or mourning, or just a place of, I want to say, desperation, and they take advantage of that.
Yeah, predators will prey on those people, so you have to be very careful and do your due diligence on that.
And that's actually one of the reasons we went with an agency, because you can go through like adoption, what is it called, that we decided not to do.
I forgot, but you could do it like, I'm gonna use the word loosely, like private, or like a DIY kind of thing.
Yeah,
but
so
it's really weird.
So they talked to us about like private adoption, and you can do private adoption, but you have to kind of, the way they said it we didn't really like, which is like market yourself.
Yeah, and by private we mean like she just said, like market yourself, like not even go through like
Yeah.
you can do it yourself or do it through a private agency, which is kind of like a for-profit thing, which is a complete separate thing altogether. But continue, sorry. Okay.
And it's just like with the agency, you know that things are legitimate, whereas if you do it on the other side, sometimes you're not sure and you're kind of gambling, and you're gambling with your feelings, you're gambling with your family, and you're gambling with a lot of money. So I mean, everybody has like a risk boundary, but for us, I think it was better to go through an agency just for that. So then after we decided, we had this conversation with the adoption consultant, and we decided to tell the consultant that we did want to move forward, and then they sent over like some more preliminary paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork.
Yes, to no end.
You will spend hours on hours on hours on hours doing paperwork, and it gets very frustrating because some of that is like with the state and they take forever. But when we decided to go with the agency, so they sent over the preliminary paperwork, and then the first thing you do is a adoption orientation, and I think our agency runs them every month. So for all the new clients, for all the new clients that are coming in that month, they tell you, okay, well, this is the date and you have to attend. And our adoption process and our adoption journey and experience is a little weird because we were going through it during the absolute surge of COVID, and so everything was virtual. We never met any of our adoption team in person. We never did anything in person except for like things that had to be done in person, but not with the agency.
And a little add to that, because of the pandemic and we had to do it through Zoom, if the pandemic didn't never happen, and let's say we were to go through the same process, it would have been a much
more costly,
because we would have to have traveled to that agency, which is not very close by. It's extremely far. So
well, that's because of the agency we chose.
Exactly.
But to be honest, there aren't a lot of agencies. Like I said, there was only 4 that we had to narrow down, and even in other states there's only a few. I don't know why that is, but you may have to travel. Like it may not be a place close to you, and you want to choose the agency right for you, not like the one next door, and there probably isn't one next door. So there can be travel costs involved in that, just so that you guys are aware. But we didn't have to travel because it was Zoom and it was a pandemic. So then when we decided to, so we did orientation. We did the orientation, and like I said, that was a couple of hours one night. And then the next thing they said, so they talked to us and they gave us a little roadmap that kind of tells you everything, and there's prices on there. Because I'm not sure if this is a New York State thing, our adoption agency, or every adoption agency, but our adoption agency, you paid as you went. You didn't pay one price and that was it.
Yeah.
You paid for each step. So you paid for the application fee, and then once you got approved, you would pay for, so you would go to the orientation. After the orientation, the orientation was free, but after the
Okay. I don't know.
Yeah, the orientation was free. You just go to the orientation. But after the orientation, you I think this is why it's free, because that's when you ultimately decide. Because we had already did our research with the consultant, but not everyone does that. And so once you decide that you're moving forward, because some people see those prices and they're like, we can't do this. We had already seen the prices because we asked for them beforehand. But some people, if that's your first time seeing it, then that's your first time.
And full disclaimer, guys, we know everybody's initial rate. When it comes to prices, the minute you see something, we freak out. Don't get scared. I freaked out I had like a miniature panic attack underneath. Breathe, just wait. Get through all the information first. Let it settle, right? If you need to, sleep on it first. And then once you sleep on it, then remember what I said earlier about doing your due diligence for research? Do it first. And then decide after all that.
And we say that because when it's just presented to you on that piece of paper, it looks way worse than it is.
Yes, because you don't know anything. Like, oh my gosh, like you're presenting me with all this.
It's just these big numbers, and they're not really showing you like what that would really mean. And we're not rich, but there is help for adoption. Like there is help, and I'm not gonna get into that on this video because I'm doing a whole nother video next week on literally how to afford adoption. Don't let the numbers scare you because it's broken up and it is doable if that's what you want and if that's how your family's meant to come about. There is help out there. But yeah, so we had already seen the numbers because we had asked for them, so it still scared us, to be honest, at that point, because we didn't know how that was gonna work. But we just kind of moved forward, and talking to his coworker, they kind of told us that, like, just move forward in faith. And you, like, they kind of told us it breaks down, like, you know, there's a whole, the money part is a whole part of it, but it's really hard to explain unless you've been there. Like, it's not like you're paying that one price in one day.
It's really not.
It's not like that.
They break it up into steps, and your representative, the one that you work with, at that they call.
Well, I don't. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if that's everywhere or that's our agency.
Well, in particular to our agency, let's be okay. In particular to our agency, our family advocates, right? They told you, like, it's broken up into steps. So at step one, or at this section of the process, this is what you're doing. This is how much you pay, if that. And then at this step, you do it here, and it moves on piece by piece.
Right.
And
but like
I
said,
and if ever something happens, if there's ever a hiccup, they will work with you on it.
Yeah.
Again, our agency, they will work with you on it.
So, like I said, I'm not gonna get into how, like, our tips and tricks, because we did a lot of tips and tricks for affording it, but I'm not gonna get into that because it's a whole video.
Yes, you can.
But I am gonna do a video during this whole Adoption Awareness Month on that, because that's a big part of. Literally, we found out a statistic while we were doing the adoption that 88% of couples at some point in their life think about adoption, and only 2% actually go through with it, and most of that is financial reasons. And
a lot of that, and like we just said before, people get startled right from the jump, and like, no, you can't do that.
There are people that we met, and we didn't really get into it because it's not our business. But there are people that we met that were open and wanted to adopt, and really were coming from places like we were, of infertility, of hopelessness, and they wanted to adopt, and they gave up based on the money. And honestly, not everyone's going to be able to afford adoption, but there is ways.
There are definitely ways. So, okay, we'll get there.
I just don't want people, like, I know that number is so scary, especially when you're coming from that place. Like, you just, the way they break it down to you, they don't get into the help yet. They do later on, but in the beginning orientation, they didn't talk about help and grants. They didn't talk about it. They just said, this is the number, boom, and it just kind of hits you. So, but we just went forward, because at that point, it was like,
oh, excuse me.
At that point, yeah, she just woke up. Oh. So at that point, it was already, we had already seen it, like I said, and we had basically already decided that this is what we wanted to do, and we were going to make it happen. So even though it scared us, we moved forward. And the next step to that was, you have to take adoption classes, or at least with our agency, you have to take the classes. They are mandatory. And Anna woke up from her nap here. She's a little sleepy baby. How you doing? Hi. So yeah, so the next step was the classes, and I was a little frustrated with the classes in the beginning, I'm gonna be honest, because we signed up and we did the orientation, and now I was finally gaining hope again. And the way the classes run is like every 3 months, so I literally think we waited an extra month. And when you're going through this process, especially coming, like I said, from a place of infertility where you've already been going through this long process, you're just so eager, and just, you know, that 1 month of now we got kind of stalled. It was a little disheartening in the beginning, but we went through the class. So the classes was, you had to sign up for 1 whole weekend, and like I said, it was virtual. So normally this is what we were talking about before. Had it not been virtual, we would have had to travel about 3 hours away from our home. We would have had to.
That's like 6 hours away, you know. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like,
far away.
Probably like 6 hours, because I don't know where exactly they hold the classes.
Same place.
I don't know, but it was hours away, and then I think they do give you room and board, but we would have to pay for our own food, we would have had to pay for the travel expenses and spend a whole weekend, and it would have been an added probably like $1,000 on top of the already mounting charges that we talked about. So that we actually were a little grateful that it was virtual. And even virtual, we got to meet people from the different areas too, which I don't know if that would have been the same. So we actually embraced the virtual part, and we were in the pandemic anyway, so it was fine. But we had to give up one weekend, so you had to pay for the classes first too. So that stalled a lot of people that I know that started with us. There were people that I know that started with us, and then they had to save for the classes, and then that stalled them. So one of my tips that I'm going to give, I'll probably talk about this more in the financial video, but I'm just going to say it now. If you know that you're going to adopt in the future, so for us, we didn't know we were going to go through infertility. We knew we were open to adoption for the future, but we thought it was going to be way down the line, and it probably is at this point because of how things worked out.
And we had this conversation, if you remember back to our the way when we first met video, right?
Right.
This is a conversation we had way back when we were dating. We didn't even decide.
Right. So, but I always knew that I'm open to adoption, so I wanted to make sure that the person I ended up with was open to it too, because it's just something that I always wanted to do. But going through infertility, now we were here in this place after struggling for 3 years, and now it was like it was just very different where we were coming from. And where was I going with this?
We're going with about you said a tip specifically.
Oh yeah. So my point is, if you don't know you're gonna adopt, if you end up getting married and you go through infertility, if you end up being a single parent and deciding to adopt, then you're not gonna know you're gonna adopt until you kind of decide and get into it. But if you know, if you're someone who knows that you're infertile before you meet your partner, if you're someone who knows that you want to adopt in the future just because you want to and you want to help children that are in that situation, my tip would be to start saving money like
yesterday.
I don't want to say that. Like 2 years before you actually intend to start the process. And you're never probably gonna save all of it because there are unexpected things that happen, but just to have like a little nest egg towards your adoption would help. And so yeah, we went through the classes, we paid for the classes, we went through the classes, and that was a whole weekend, and that was really helpful. Each day they kind of did a different topic, and that helped us deal with our fears around adoption, because one of the classes you got to just talk about the process. Another class you got to meet other adoptees and other parents who had adopted, and you were also meeting people that were taking the classes with you. So it was just very helpful, and we came out of that weekend pretty hopeful. And it just helped us kind of move forward with the process, because now we met people like us, and we met people who had done it, and it was just, we were starting that little community, and that was really, really helpful. So I really liked the classes, and it really taught us kind of how to deal with the next few months, and it was a support, and it was a great way to start off the process. So I really like that they make us do the classes. I thought that it caused us to be informed as we move forward as intended adopted parents, and I know other agencies may not do it that way because I've heard that, but I really like that about our agency, that they are really big on adoption education. And it was actually one of the reasons we chose them over other agencies. So ask your agency if you're shopping around about adoption education and how they kind of handle that, because it does help and it is important. And then I'm just moving along. Sam is taking care of the baby for a moment, but he's gonna join me after. But so then after the classes, the next big thing is to get home study approved. And I know a lot of people know about that. That's kind of what you hear when you hear about adoption. You kind of hear home study approval. But honestly, there's a lot that goes into getting home study approved. It is a big process. Like we said earlier, it's a lot of paperwork. That's where the bulk of your paperwork is going to be, because a home study approval is literally, I think, about 100-page document. So it literally took us, I want to say we did, how long do you think it took us to do all that paperwork before we actually could even do the home study. Like, it took a while.
Like a little over a month, I believe.
Yeah, and it only took a month because we were really on top of it because we really wanted to start the process.
Like, this is with like work involved, and like doing it on weekends, like literally doing a lot of work.
It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
So in order to get home study approved, like I said, it's a lot of paperwork. I don't know how it works in other states, but New York State specifically is really, really like strong on making sure that any child that's being adopted in their state is going to people who intend to be their parents, love them, care for them, and support them. And I want to say that because we literally had to go through like 7 background checks just on New York State alone.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things. So you fill that out, and then you have to wait, because New York State, you gotta wait for them to clear it. You just gotta wait for them to clear it. Like, so we just had to move on with the paperwork.
And some of those you can't move on unless the previous step has been.
They can't see you. They can't see. Like, you can't see. Your face is cut off from the whole video.
And some of them can't even really be processed unless the previous one has been approved first.
So it's a little, and then so you have to also go through, like, New York State has one, and then I think Child Protective Services has one, and there's just a lot. There's like I said, 7 different background checks. And then another one was that we had to, this was what I meant by there were certain things that you couldn't avoid doing in person. You have to do them in person, which is you have to have fingerprints. And the thing is, based on our jobs, we already had our fingerprints, but they won't take those. You have to get it done with
from scratch.
Yeah, from scratch with I think this is Child Protective Services, right? So even though we have I actually got my fingerprints done for 2 previous jobs, so I've had them done both. But agencies don't talk to each other. Don't know why. That's not how it works. And so because we didn't work in Child Protective Services, we had to get it redone. So we made an appointment. We got our fingerprints done. And make an appointment, because the people that didn't make it was a long line, but we had an appointment. We made an appointment. It wasn't that bad. We got it done. And these are like little hidden fees too, because you have to pay for that, different things like that. And then one of the things you have to do in person, regardless pandemic or not, was that we had to do you have to have an updated physical, and it has to be within the last year. And then even if you have that physical, you still have to go back to your doctor, because they have to sign a paper that the adoption agency gives you, and basically the paper is stating that you are healthy enough to raise a child.
Yes.
Now, I don't want that to deter people who have underlying conditions, because that's not what they mean, because we asked our agency that question.
Yep.
Literally, it's just your doctor saying that based on your health, you are not terminally ill. Because if you're terminally ill, they don't want you adopting a child and then unfortunately passing away on that child. And anyone could pass away. You could, God forbid, pass away, be perfectly healthy one day, pass away the next. But this is just based on the doctor's assessment.
Yeah.
You're most likely going to live the next, like our agency put it, like 18 years. So it's just a stipulation. So we had to get a physical, which was interesting in 2020, because it was just interesting, because to get a physical during the pandemic was ridiculous, but we did, and that took longer than it should have, because the paperwork took way longer, because the doctor was not moving her feet and filling out the paperwork and dragging her feet for it. So it should have taken like a week, and honestly that took like almost a month. So once we got all that paperwork in, now this was already, so we started in June, got all the paperwork. Like I said, some stuff was like we had to make up doctor's appointments, we had to do all that stuff. So by the time we submitted everything to get to,
it was like October, right?
No, it was like September.
Oh no, but the doctor's appointment was like in October.
No, it was in September.
Oh, that's the waiting thing that you were. Yeah. The waiting for the paper. Yeah.
So this was like September, and then now the agency had to wait for. We were still waiting for New York State. We did all this paperwork while we waited for New York State. We were still waiting for New York State, and by the time the agency got all that paperwork, now this was like October, and then so literally I think like the weekend of Halloween, we got assigned with our social worker, and that's what you need for a home study. Your social worker does your home study. And because of the pandemic, again, our home study was actually virtual as well. So we weren't sure about that, because technically they're supposed to come in and look at your home and talk to you, but we literally had to walk around with
the laptop,
our laptop and our phone, and show everything. And she like specifically told us parts of the house that had to be shown, and we had to show it and then have a conversation. And I want to talk about the home study because that's a big part of the adoption, and I know it's a lot. I've seen it on YouTube. I've seen it, like, I've heard people say it. I've heard people, like, that they're really, really scared of the home study. Luckily, we got a good social worker. She's very nice. She's very funny. She made it, like, very comforting.
Yeah.
But I have heard that some social workers can be, like, a little, like, mean about it, almost intimidating on purpose.
Like many jobs, you know, there's a person who's passionate and loving and can make it okay, and then there are people who are not necessarily, like, you know. So
luckily, I guess it's the luck of the draw.
Yeah.
Hopefully you get a good social worker if you're looking to do a home study. But honestly, the number one thing is just be yourself and be honest, because you don't want to lie on a home study. You can't lie on a home study. Your adoption would be done right there, even if it's a small, like, something that you're just uncomfortable with. Just be as honest as you can, be as open as you can, and that's what Sam touched on earlier. Some of the questions are going to be very personal, so I would just say prepare yourself to be vulnerable. Prepare yourself to answer very personal questions, because
you will get asked questions that you never thought anybody would actually ask you. Like, it's like, whoa, I'm supposed to know that.
And it depends on your personality too. You know, I really don't care about personal questions, but Sam kind of does. Like, I really don't care about personal questions, depending on why you're asking me. If you're just asking me to be nosy, then I'm probably just going to tell you that I'm not going to answer you. But in the adoption process, I didn't really care. And if somebody's asking me something that's going to help them, I don't really care on being open about it. But not everyone's like that. Different people are shyer, or you're just not used to talking about some of the things that come up. Or maybe you just never even thought about it. Maybe it's not even personal, but, like, one of the questions they asked us that I know the answer to and I'm comfortable with our relationship, but I just never thought about was, like, how did they word it? It was something along the lines of, like, how do you guys deal with conflict? And I know how we deal with conflict. Like, we're good at talking to each other and our marriage is solid, but I just never thought about it in the way they were asking, because they're not asking for me to say, oh yeah, we talk. They want, like, in-depth, detailed answers. So it's kind of like going through marriage counseling. Literally, like,
to even get into the depths of it, they'll be like, okay, when you have a conflict, what do you say? How do you say it? If you need, it's like, okay, you say you decompress. What do you do? Like,
it's very detailed, and the way it was structured was kind of like a therapy session, kind of like going through couples therapy, or, like, if you guys ever, we actually did it, premarital, like, stuff with our pastor, with our reverend that married us. But if you guys ever did that, like, premarital stuff, premarital therapy, or, like, when your reverend married you, or when your pastor married you, or whoever married you, if they had you do, like, a preliminary class or questioning, it's kind of like that. But now this is around, like, a child that you want, and so it's a little bit more personal. And we didn't have children yet, so, like, if we were to choose to adopt now that we have Anna, they would actually, well, not now, she's 6 months old, but, like, let's say if she was, like, 5 years old, they would actually interview her as well. So the way it works is they interview the couple that's adopting, if you're a couple. They interview you separately as well, and they interview any children you have in the home that are old enough to be interviewed. They will interview them, and they also ask you about your pets. So that's something that we don't mind sharing about Charlie. Of course we don't.
I mean, you saw him in the beginning of the video, right?
But we just weren't expecting it. Like, on top of you having to have your physicals up to date, your pets have to have their vaccinations up to date. They call the vet and they ask the vet if the vet feels that you are responsible and taking sure. And I think they also want to make sure that your pet is healthy, because you're bringing an infant into the home as well. And they didn't interview Charlie, but they asked us questions about him. They asked us, is he good with children? What is he like? Is he hyper? Is he, where does he sleep? Where is his play area? We had to show them his bed. We had to show them his water, his food. We had to show them receipts on his vet, because they don't want you to, that's another thing, they don't want you to do things because you're adopting. So they don't want you to take him to the vet now because they told you that he had to have his shots up to date. We had to backtrack, like, the last couple of years that we've been taking him to this doctor and things like that.
Yeah, and that he's healthy and like he's not projectile vomiting everywhere.
That we've
like,
been taking care of him while we had him, and not just because you are telling us now that we have to take care of him. So yeah, they just want to know that that you're a responsible person. So that was a long process. I think we actually had to meet with her for 3 different meetings because the home study is so many questions, and it's like a conversation. It's a long conversation. So one question, you could be answering that one question for like 10 minutes.
We were in that meeting for what, like 3 hours?
Yeah, but it was 3 days. So it's like 3 hours per meeting, and then it's like 3 days. So like 9 to 12 hours fully of just talking to this person. And that's what we mean. Like, it's not like a question and then you give an answer. It's a question and it's very in-depth. And probably in person it will even be more, because now you have them walking through your house and things like that. Which we didn't have that, but we did have to show her certain things. So we had to show that we had a place. So this is the main things for New York State. Again, I'm gonna say New York State only because different states are different. But for New York State, you have to have certain things in order to pass your home study. If you don't have those things, it's an automatic fail, no matter how good of a person you are, no matter how good your questions are. You have to show that you already have a place for the child to sleep. And that, I don't mean a room, but I mean literally like either a pack and play, a bassinet, or a crib. And then at that time, we didn't have a nursery, but we did have a pack and play, and that's what we showed her. And so you have to have that before you get home study approved, because you could get a baby when you're home study approved. It could take a while, but it also could not take a while. So you have to be somewhat ready. You have to show that you have a safe place for the child to sleep. You have to show that you have a carbon monoxide detector, a fire alarm, and you have to show that you have fire safety in the home in general. And then there was like 2 other things.
The nursery itself, right? A separate room?
No, you don't have to have a separate room.
No. Oh, yeah, you're right.
You only have to have a separate room if you're adopting a child of a certain age and a different gender than a child you already have in the home. But we didn't have that because we didn't have a child yet. You have to show that you have either, like I said, a bassinet, a pack and play, or a crib, which we used the pack and play back then because if we were to get a call right away, that's what would have had to be until we got the nursery set up. But you have to show that you already have that. And then you already have, I think you already have to have like a coming home outfit.
Yeah, like actual clothes.
You don't have to have like a whole closet full of children's clothes, but you have to show that you have something to clothe a child if they were to come to your house like this. Because like I said, you could get home study approved and you could get a call the next day. You could get a call 6 months from there. You could get a call 3 months from there, a year, 2 years, 3 years. Until you're home study approved, you're not going to get any profile calls. But once you are, you're pretty much active because you do all the other stuff. So part of the paperwork is making your profile. So you have to also make your profile, which consists of, at least for our agency, again, they do a website, they have you do a book, and they have you do a video.
Yeah.
And we did all of that. So home study approval literally means everything else is done. So your book, your profile, everything is done once you do the home study. Because the home study is what's telling you that you're legally able, that legally showing that you're safe, and the social worker is signing off. So we talk to the social worker, and a big part of your home study is called your adoption grid. And I want to touch on the grid because it could be a lot. So I think every adoption agency uses some form of the grid.
Yeah.
The grid is a long paper. It was done electronically for our agency, but it's still a paper where it basically lists, I want to say like over 100 different scenarios, medical conditions, backgrounds, just different things that you will or won't be open to in your home study. So it'll ask you, I'm not going to get into specifics because I don't want to like for confidentiality of other people, I don't want to like get into specific some of the specific questions, but let's just give an example. It will say like, will you be open to cases where the child has a learning disability?
Yeah.
Right? And some stuff was hard for us to answer because some stuff you're not gonna know. If you're adopting a 5-year-old, then maybe you'll know. But if you're adopting a newborn, you don't know.
You wouldn't know till much later.
The way our agency explained it to us was, try to look into the future and say, if my child had this, would I be okay with it? And so we filled out the grid like that, and other things. So that it kind of splits up, and it's like pertaining to first you, then your future intended child, and then like the birth parents. So one of the big things is like, will you be open to an open adoption? Because a lot of people want an open adoption, but if you're not open to it, they don't want to continue to give you cases that have something like with that. So you have to fill that out, and then that becomes part of your home study. That's a big chunk of your home study. So the social worker actually goes through it with you and makes sure that you're not just putting yes to things that you're not actually open to in order to get cases, because you don't want to do that. You want to be really, really honest on that grid. And once you adopt a child, I really don't care what anybody says. Like, this is the way I feel about adoption. The child's not blood, we all know that, but that doesn't matter. Once you adopt that child, before you adopt the child is the birth parents. Like, they have every right to make the decision. They have a right to change their mind. But once you sign papers and take that child home, that child becomes your child. So that child's gonna be your child no matter what happens. So if that child develops a chronic condition, if that child has a lifelong need, if that child, whatever happens to that child, you are now their parents, and you're responsible for that, and you're responsible for seeing them through that, just as if you gave birth to a child. Even Anna, like, she was born healthy, and I hope she stays healthy forever, but that's not guaranteed. You always have to be prepared as a parent to care for whatever happens, and that doesn't change just because you adopted a child. Like, you're not guaranteed anything, and you want to be honest about things that you're just not open to.
Yeah.
And you can't be prepared for everything, and things happen that no one will ever know. You know, you could be born healthy, like I said, and something could happen, and that could be whether you're adopted or whether you give birth to your own child or whatever. But certain things you might not be open to, and you want to be honest about them, because you don't want to adopt a child and be, I don't want to say the word desperate, but like be in a desperate situation. I've seen people that like, they adopt a child and then they realize that they can't handle what they thought they could handle. So it just sets up for a bad, like, an unhealthy home environment, and it just sets up for a child that could have gone to a family that could support them. And you just want to be honest with what you can and can't handle. So if you know that you can't handle a child with special needs, then don't sign the papers for a special needs adoption.
Yeah, you have to check off what you and if you have a partner are most comfortable with. Like, because at the end of the day, the baby becomes yours, and you're gonna be with the baby at all times. You're gonna be their parent now and into the future until, it doesn't matter.
And I want to say this too, even in like any child you bring into your home, even if it's temporary, even if it's a foster care situation or a favor to someone, any child that you bring into your home, to me, you are responsible, even if it's temporary. So be honest about what you can handle in your own household and in your own family. And sometimes that's hard because you're looking into the future. You're like, I don't know what I would do if this happened. But you really have to have those conversations. Like Sam said, if you have a partner, if you're adopting by yourself, that's a little bit different. We don't have experience in that. But honestly, I guess you would have to have those conversations maybe with yourself, and also probably with the people that are going to support you. So whoever's going to be helping you, whoever your village, so to speak, is. But mostly with yourself if you don't have a partner. But if you have a partner, you want to speak really, really honestly about what you guys can handle and what each of you are open to. You may not agree on everything in it. It took a long time to fill out that grid, and it's a big part of the home study. And there's a lot of things that come up that you never even thought about. So just be honest, take your time, have the conversation. Don't just check yes or no. Have the conversation, because there were things where initially we're like, oh, like we're thrown back by the question, but then when you talk about it, you're like, you know what, I could handle that. And then there are other things where you want to say yes, but you just can't. you know that that wouldn't be right for your family.
Yep.
So yeah, and then they go over that with you, make sure that you're really okay with the things you said you were okay with. And ultimately, I think it was like a month. She took like a month to write it because, like I said, it's a 100-page document. They put everything in there. So all the paperwork that you did before that, all the background checks, the fingerprints, all the paperwork, you have to submit like financial stuff too, like proof. You have to submit, you have to have like, for our agency, it was like 4 people have to be your, what is it called, references, and it has to be people that you've known for more than 5 years or more. And to be honest, that's another thing that came up that we had to handle, because we actually didn't tell everybody that we were doing the adoption while we were doing the process. We didn't tell people while we were doing the process that we were gonna go through an adoption process. We told them when we were already home study approved. So we told our entire family, friends, all those people when we were home study approved. But going through the process, they were like, well, you need references. And so we were like, oh, now we need to find 4 people or whatever it was.
I think so.
4 people that we trust to keep this secret, because we're not ready to tell our friends and family. So if you're somebody who is watching this who's not willing to tell your friends and family, or who doesn't want to for whatever reason, and that's your right, until you go through the process, just know that you're gonna have to find somebody you trust, because you need references. And luckily we did have at least a few people that we trusted with our secret, and they were our references. All of that goes into your home study, and then she also writes a long report on the conversation you had, on how she, the social worker, on how they feel about you, on like there's different things that come up, and then she signs off on that.
Yeah.
People can't see you because Anna's walking.
I know, someone decided.
Come here, baby. Oh, gross. All that paperwork gets put together, so that's why it takes so long. And then she writes her report, or they write their report, and they sign off on it. And honestly, that was like a really exciting part of the process, because you get home study approved and you could get a call any day. And we touched on that in past videos, but that's a really exciting process and part of the process. And I just want to share a piece of advice that we got. I think this was from your coworker that adopted, but I think other people have said it too. Like, when you're going through the adoption process, it could be very taxing. It could be like another emotional journey. So you're already going through infertility, now this is another emotional journey. Or it could be a long wait, and you want to enjoy you want to celebrate every triumph. So even the small stuff. So we did celebrate when we were home study approved. We did celebrate that. Oh my god, we actually did it. And it was a long, like I said, a lot of paperwork, a lot of late nights of filling all this out, trying to get it to be done as soon as possible, so that we could just get to the point where we were just awaiting family.
Heck, celebrate the fact that you finished the paperwork. Like,
yeah, we did, because it was exhausting.
Yeah.
But yeah, the home study was a big part, because now you are approved and you could get a call any day. And that, I think we were home study approved like literally right before Thanksgiving. So it was beautiful, because we had a new sense of hope for this holiday season. Like I said that in a future video as well, but it's true. I mean, a past video as well, but it's so true. Like, and we got to tell our families now, because we were holding the secret, because we just, honestly guys, that wasn't malicious. Like, some people in the past like have said like, you guys don't say things until it kind of happens, and that's just the way we operate. It's not personal. And honestly, I just want to say that, because some people might feel bad if they're in the same boat and they're not ready to share that they're adopting, or if you're in a different situation, it could be something else, if you're not ready to share anything. But it is your right to share things when you are ready, and we were ready when we were home study approved. We didn't want opinions, we didn't want voices. We were already kind of dealing with it on our own, and we just wanted to do it and then tell people when it was like, oh, we could have a baby joining our family any day. And so we waited till we were home study approved to officially announce, and then that was a celebratory moment. So and yeah, so once you're home study approved, you can still take, so at least with our agency, like I said earlier, they are very keen on adoption education. They're not just there trying to like do the adoption, but they're also trying to help you learn, because adoption is a lifelong thing. If you become a parent of an adoptee, you're going to be a parent of adoptee for life. And so you're going to have to support that child and the fact that they're adopted and their feelings around that for life. And most of the adoptions that they place in that agency are open adoption. And there's different levels to that. But you're going to have to navigate that for life. And so they try to educate their clients as much as they can. So through the waiting process, we were taking classes. You can take parenting classes. You can take other adoption information classes. We took a class that it wasn't really a class. It was more of a discussion, a seminar, meetup, whatever you want to call it. But it was a group of birth mothers that came and talked to intended adopted parents on how they felt. And it was pretty interesting to gain their perspective. And it was nice to gain their perspective because you got to hear the other side of it and you got to understand their side of it. And it was just a really open conversation. And I really like that our agency... You like your mango? Mm-hmm. I really like that our agency does put education into it. And
yes,
you want definitely. That. And even if your agency doesn't offer as much, there are online classes and probably in-person classes too.
Because taking those classes will also not it helps educate you in the formal sense, but it will also defeat a lot of misconceptions around things you thought you knew, which are not even remotely close to true.
And it will help your fears, like any things that you're afraid of going through the adoption process, any misguided things that you have, misconceptions like he said, or even help you grow.
What's the matter?
What happened? It will help you grow a thick skin. You need a thick skin to be you need a thick skin to be a parent, guys. But you need a thick skin if you're going to be an adopted parent, because people have opinions and people have unsolicited opinions. And honestly, sometimes you just have to ignore it, but you need a thick skin to ignore it. And those classes kind of... What's wrong?
Go for it.
You don't like it or you like it? You want it to go faster? Those classes help you kind of just prepare yourself for what it's going to be like. And like I said, we can't speak on... You full? We can't speak on the after process, and I'm really trying to reach out to some of our friends that we made in the adoption community that have already adopted, that can probably be willing to come on the channel and make that video and help us do that, because I think that would be a good perspective. But we're not going to speak on that because we never went through it.
Yeah, we know.
So yeah, we are going to try to reach out and make that video, but this is just the process we went through, how we felt about it. And so I'm just saying that helped, because that helped maybe when that helped us gauge our fears and talk about our fears and gain a community and meet people that were also adopting and meet people that had already done it and ask questions and just gain more information. And it really did help. So that was a big part. And so once we were home study approved, like we said, we waited. What's the matter? We took the classes, we took more classes, like we said, let me see. We took more classes and we waited, and like I said, we got a few profile calls that never pans out, but I think I want to do a whole video on what a profile call is like, because that would be too long to explain. But a profile call in short term is literally when so the way our agency worked was that they would call you. So like I said, you would fill out the grid with things that you were open to, and if a case came in that matched something that you were open to, they would show your profile to that expected mother, along with many others. So let's say you and 10 other couples matched, this person matched what you were looking for, and you also had to match what they were looking for. Let's say that happened. They would show all 10 profiles, and then let's say this expected mother chose 3 of them, and you included. They would call, and if you were interested, you would become part of the group that she moved on. And then from there, she would choose, or they would choose, if it was a couple, whoever they wanted, and then you would go through the process. So in layman's terms, a profile call is initially just a possible opportunity for a match. It doesn't mean that you're matched with the child yet. It's just a possible opportunity, but it's done in a specific way. So I think it would be helpful to do a video on what that's like and kind of how to prepare yourself if you're someone going through the adoption process. Definitely. For those calls. Yeah. So yeah, so we waited, and like I said, we ended up getting pregnant in August. And so, as we said in the previous video, we decided to pause our adoption, to deal with our pregnancy, go through the whole pregnancy, embrace the pregnancy. We had Anna. She's only 6 months old. So as of right now, the adoption is on pause, and we are still open to adoption. We're not sure if that's going to be our future. It's going to be a different way of parenting, but right now we're just enjoying Anna, and that's the way our story worked out. But it was a process that we went through, and we feel like we did learn a lot, and we can share for people that are open to adoption, that are thinking about adoption. And so that was kind of like what the journey was like for us. If you have any further questions, we probably can't answer everything because we're not experts. We're not in the adoption agency, but we still have a relationship with them. And like I said, we're not like off of the agency. Our adoption's just paused. So we can always talk to them if there's a question we can't answer. And there's probably a lot of questions. We probably know more than we think we do. We could probably answer other questions. So if you have any questions that we didn't answer, you can drop those in the comments. But that was our experience, and that was kind of some of the stuff that you have to prepare for when you're going through it. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I'm going to make further videos on adoption this month, since it is adoption awareness, and we're just going to bring awareness to the topic. Mm-hmm. So that was our video. I hope you guys enjoyed. And like I said, any further questions, just drop it in the comments.
Like, share, subscribe, and, don't be shy. Just, we're always here. We'll try to answer everything to the best that we can. Okay? Say bye-bye.